morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live in Studio West. Good morning. This is the last morning I am going to be waking you up, unless you begin the morning with my podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh, because beginning Monday, I am going to move to the 3 to 6 p.m. live East Coast afternoon drive slot so I can return to talking to the West Coast as well. Seb Gorka, Dr. Gorka, is going back into the White House with Donald Trump. I am moving into the afternoon slot, which I freely admit I have long coveted and have long looked forward to close the end of the day and look back at what's happened. But I want to begin this last morning show by thanking Dwayne and Adam and Harley, who have been here every day in the middle of the night working the vampire shift in California from 1 o'clock in the morning till we wrap up the show at 6 a.m. out on the West Coast. And then we broadcast it at different times during the day, but we do often open up the morning for people. And I appreciate that I've done that for you, and I thank you for giving us a listen. I thank that trio, plus Ben Brigman, who was the first Harley, for just being here every day to help me deliver this product. Now, I'm saddened by the fact that my last week in California has been a mixture of grief and anger and a lot of misinformation from a lot of ignorant people. Now, there's a difference between stupidity and ignorance. Stupid people don't have the capacity to know what they don't know, and so they ramble on and they talk. Ignorant people presume to speak to a subject matter, these fires are on the table here, without knowing anything about it. And there are lots of people in between, the totally ignorant and the totally stupid. I actually know a lot about California land use law, fire prevention, fuel load, water conservation. I know a lot about that stuff. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it this hour so that you have a little bit of background. But I do not need any more lectures on people about climate change and everything that Donald Trump is saying that is wrong. No, Donald Trump is exactly right. He has been dogging Governor Newsom, for 8 years about fuel management in the coastal sage scrub areas of California and about water conservation, about the Delta smelt, dogging him. And Gavin has been blissfully indifferent for 6 years. Before that, Jerry Brown was indifferent for 8 years. So we're suffering a lot of consequences out here, and I see people blithely saying, can't we talk about climate change? Jim Sciutto and I like Jim. Jim's a friend, CNN anchor. We were online yesterday, and you know, can't we talk about climate change? I said, no, they got nothing to do with climate change. It's got nothing to do with climate change. 100-mile-an-hour Santa Ana winds are not new. They are not new. We've gone through them many, many times. This morning, the wind is picking up. I don't think we're going to get anywhere like we got earlier in the week, but it's picking up. The air is terrible. My eyes are full of the sort of flotsam and jetsam of the fire, but I'm 55 miles south of the Palisades, a little bit further away from the Pasadena fire, the Eaton fire. I want to read to you a little bit that appeared yesterday. In 2014, California passed a bond measure to finally do something about capturing rain and snowpack runoff before it blends into the Pacific Ocean, becoming useless both as drinking water and fire defense. Prop 1 passed overwhelmingly. Voters paid $7.5 billion, at least theoretically, to make it happen. Gavin Newsom has been the governor of California for the past 6 of these 10 years. Would you like to take a stab at how many of the new state reservoir or water capture systems have been completed? You're absolutely right. 0. Quadrillions of gallons of fresh water have been lost or worse, intentionally pumped into the ocean. Insurance companies pulled out of the LA basin years ago. That's a little bit of an overstatement. A lot of insurance companies pulled out of a lot of areas in the LA basin, those that butted up against open space areas that were not appropriately cleared of brush, and they asked for a premium increase to spread the risk of what would be inevitably a destructive, damaging inferno, such as we have seen, and they just refused to reinsure after the California regulators said, no, we won't let you charge that. And guess what? You can't make people be in the insurance business. You can't make someone insure a house. So they left. A lot of people leave California because nothing works here. That happened now. We have thousands of people, no home insurance, among the 10,000 people who've lost home and businesses. Now, mostly that's in the Palisades, the very, very rich area. But just because people are house rich, don't assume that they're going to be able to walk away without penury. John Podhoretz, commenting on this on the commentary podcast yesterday, said many people will be reduced to penury as a result of this catastrophe. And John is absolutely right. If you know anything about this, there are a lot of stars, and you will get a lot of attention to the stars who have lost their homes. And the list is going to grow. And I have sympathy for each of these people. I would not want my house to burn down. It is such a nightmare. So when you hear that Tom Hanks lost his house, and Steven Spielberg lost his house, and Miley Cyrus, Ben Affleck, Jamie Lee Curtis, Anthony Hopkins, Billy Crystal, John Goodman, James Woods, Maria Shriver, that's Arnold's old home. The list is long. Eugene Levy, I could go on for a long. Many, many, many people with a lot of money lost their homes. Many people with no money lost their homes. But they're in the Palisades for a reason. Their parents or their grandparents moved there decades ago, and they have a house on which there is no mortgage and about or for which no insurance might have been available, and they are absolutely screwed. What I really want people to understand is this was all preventable. The Santa Ana winds are predictable. The necessity of having high water pressure in the elevated areas close to the coastal sage scrub of the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy is necessary. Malibu has burned before, but fires have always been contained because there's always been a plan. The fire season now goes longer when it doesn't begin to rain in December. It's kind of elementary that you should know this, that when there is no rain, and there hadn't been any rain. We had floods of rain last year. Floods of rain. It was the wettest year I've ever spent in California, and I've been here in the winter since 1989. I lived here year-round from 1989 to 2016. Now I live in the Beltway, except when I teach, which is in the winter, January through March, a little bit of April. So I've been here every winter since 1989. Before that, I lived in 78, 79, and 80 out here. I know California in my bones. I have been a land use lawyer forever. This did not have to happen. I'm going to explain that to you this hour. Now, what I quoted to you was Dwayne's article for Hot Air, which our friends over at the Powerline blog quoted from extensively. Dwayne might not be much of a producer. In fact, he's not a producer, but he's a very good writer. And I would recommend that you go and read what he has compiled. He actually went and look. I'm just too sad. I know what happened here. I used to do this when I practiced law from 1989 to 2016. My practice generally involved appearing before federal, state, and local officials, asking them for the permission and the permits necessary to move forward with building houses and buildings. I'm a land use development lawyer, retired, and I teach constitutional law. The latter makes me acutely aware of the Fifth Amendment of the United States having to do with property rights, and it makes me acutely aware of much of the absurdity of the regulation that has gone on unchecked for decades, why I occasionally write pieces about how I hope the new Supreme Court steps in, revives Fifth Amendment rights, and begins to strike down the petty bureaucrats of the local planning commission, the California Department of Fish and Game, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, Region 9 of the EPA, the dreaded California Coastal Commission, which is I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in the third segment of today's program, what these poor people have to come up against. But I do want you to hear, before we get going, in the next segment, I have a tape of one woman, of one of the 10,000 homes and businesses that have been destroyed, trying to communicate what has happened to her life. And the sorrow level is so extraordinary that I'll play that for you in the next segment. I want to read to you, though, a 6-year-old in the embers of his house clutching 2 stuffed toys. A lot of stuff I love is gone. He didn't cry. They're just so deeply sad. It was so special to me, it's going to make me a little sad. I don't know why, but this is what happened to our house. And a lot of the stuff that I love is gone, and now everything is broken, and it's all lost its color and stuff. And these are the only things I have. And he has 2 small toys. Henry is his name. Henry is a great representative because he's not really young enough, he's not really old enough to understand the financial side of this, but he understands the emotional side of it completely. It is a catastrophe for thousands and thousands of our fellow citizens. Many of them, because they live in the Palisades, are not ever going to agree with me on anything. And we have to stop. And there is a great deal of temptation to go from anger to blame. We need accountability. We don't need to be angry, and we don't need to look past the suffering of these people who are so deeply injured in the Palisades, in Pasadena, in Sylmar, in Altadena. More on this on the sad last morning of the Hugh Hewitt Show in this time space.